Saludos, peace to all. This is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. And today we're covering Antilla, island of the seven cities. Purpose of this presentation is to explain what is Antilla and its origins and definition. How does Antilla relate to Spain, Portugal, and the Moors? Did King Roderick, Don Rodrigo, ever visit Antilla? Did Spanish nobles and bishops arrive in the Americas before Columbus? Is there a connection between Antilla and the Antilles of the Caribbean? Let's go. What is Antilla? Antilla, for island of the other or opposite island. It may be a reference to the belief that the island lay directly opposite from the mainland Portugal, as it's usually charted, consistent with the seven cities story. Its size and rectangular shape is a near mirror image of the Kingdom of Portugal itself. 1424 Pisagano map features an island called Antilla. The map has notes in Venetian and Portuguese. What does Antilla have to do with the Moors of Spain and the famous seven cities? The seven cities on the island of Antilla established by Christian bishops fleeing the Moors in Spain. It is from Christian Iberia that the legend of Antilla emerged. According to the legend, in 714, during the Muslim conquest of Hispania, 7 Christian bishops of Visigoth Hispania, led by the Bishop of Porto, embarked with their parishioners on ships and set sail westward into the Atlantic Ocean to escape the Arab conquerors. They stumbled upon an island and decided to settle there. They burned their ships to permanently sever their link and was to be a refuge from quote-unquote miscreants of Africa. The legend in this form is told in various places. The principal source is an inscription on the Martin Bahim's 1492 Nuremberg globe, which reads in English translation, in the year 734 after the birth of Christ, when all of Spain was overrun by the miscreants of Africa, this island of Antilla, called also the Isle of the Seven Cities, was peopled by the Archbishop of Porto with 6 other bishops and certain companions, male and female, who fled from Spain with their cattle and property. In the year 1414, a Spanish ship approached very near this island. The ancient Celtics and the Visigoths were seafarers and are the early ancestors of the Portuguese. Were the nobles of Portugal capable of traveling the seas in the 7th century? The Arab interpretation of Antilla, the Arabic altin or altinin for dragon, a reference to the old Arab legends about sea dragons on the edge of the ocean, and that the island may have been known as Jazirat al-Tinin or Dragon's Isle in Andalus Arab legend. The mention of dragons on the ocean may be understood in a literal sense, or it most likely can be applied to actual people who, since ancient times, navigated ships that were shaped as dragons. The Phoenicians, Vikings, and Celtics were all known to be traveling the seas in these long dragon-like ships. These are also the same ancient people who would have had the knowledge and ability of traveling into the Americas by sea centuries before Columbus. And as you can see here, dragon-like heads or dragon-like bodies on their boats, always depicting their boats in the image of a dragon traveling by sea. The Portuguese in America before Columbus, Newfoundland. Here we have a detailed map from 1502 by Alberto Cantino showing Newfoundland as belonging to Portugal. Page 164 on the ancient explorers of America from the Ice Age to Columbus. It highlights how the Portuguese already had the northeast of North America already mapped out. The Portuguese were already settling there years before Columbus. The family of kings. This fresco panel is situated in the audience hall of the Khazar Amra. Its original state depicted the 6 rulers of the Byzantium, Persian, Abyssinian, Spain, China, and the Turks, whose names were written in Arabic and Greek. Roderick of Spain ruled only 711 AD. This provided a clue on the possible date of the construction of the painting. The kings are all depicted with the same gesture, with their hands facing west. Is this painting depicting the 6 bishops that fled from Spain heading west into the Americas? This painting is an historical painting, dates back to right around the time the Moors were entering Spain, and it depicts 6 rulers or 6 kings all doing the same hand gesture, gesturing to the west, and one of these 6 kings being the king of Spain himself, Don Rodrigo. Don Rodrigo flees mysteriously into the Ocean Isles, while Spain awaited for his triumphant return. I'm reading from the source, a well-known source, The Story of the Moors in Spain by Stanley Lane Poole. I'm reading in chapter 1. This is, I believe, the last page in chapter 1. It talks about when the Moors were entering Spain and the last moments of King Roderick's reign in Spain. So it says here, so runs the old Spanish ballad, but the fate of Roderick has remained a mystery to this day. His horse and sandals were found on the river bank the day after the battle, but his body was not with them. Doubtless he was drowned and washed out to the great ocean. But the Spaniards would not believe this. They clothed the dead king with a holy mystery, which assuredly did not enfold him when alive. They made the last of the Goths into a legendary savior, like King Arthur, and believed that he would come again from his resting place in some ocean isle, healed of his wound, to lead the Christians once more against the infidels. In the Spanish legends, Roderick spent the rest of his life in the pious acts of penance and was slowly devoured by snakes in punishment for the sins he had committed until his last crime was washed out. The body's pain had sparred the spirit's pain, and Don Rodrigo was suffered to depart the peaceful isle, whence his countrymen long awaited his triumphant return. So here it speaks about the legend of Don Rodrigo, how he flees into an island and his countrymen in Spain long awaits his return. This goes into the legend of King Roderick. Can that island be Antilla? For sure. The Promised Land. When the Moors invaded Spain, 7 Christian bishops fled by ship from Portugal into the Atlantic Ocean. King Roderick, Don Rodrigo, had also taken refuge in Antilla after the invasion of the Moors, or the Berbers. Is it possible that King Roderick could have reached the Americas 700 years before Columbus? Is Antilla and the Antilles the same place? Antilla and the Antilles, also pronounced in the Antillean Creole, Antilles, or Spanish Antillas, French Antilles, Dutch Antillean, Antillean Creole, Antilles, Haitian Creole, Haiti, and Antilles, and Jamaican Patois, Antilles. So Antilles is pronounced many various ways depending on your dialect, all meaning the same thing. The word Antilles originated in the period before European colonization of the Americas. We read that earlier. So the word Antilles was already known, but it was in usage before European colonization. Antilla being one of those mysterious lands which figured on the medieval charts, sometimes as an archipelago, sometimes as a continuous land of greater or lesser extent. Its location fluctuating in mid-ocean between the Canary Islands and India. So obviously this was talked about very early during the times of the Moors entering Spain. Simultaneously, when the 6 bishops are fleeing Spain and entering Antilla. And Antilla and the Antilles are obviously the same place. Antilles come from the word Antilla and may refer to the 4 islands of the Greater Antilles, with Hispaniola as the center island. We meet the island's name for the first time unmistakably on the map of Bizarro in 1435. It is applied to the chief of the group of the 4 large islands, comparable to nothing actually in the Western Atlantic except the Greater Antilles. Source here is already comparing Antilla and the Antilles, further driving home the point that the Antilla of ancient times and the Antilles of the Caribbean are the same place, and these are things that were talked about and sought after by the early European explorers. So 7 reasons why Antilla and Antilles is the same place and possibly settled by the nobles of Spain and Portugal before Columbus. The facts would also answer many mysteries in early American and Hispaniola history. This would explain why Hispaniola resembles aspects of Spain as recorded by Columbus and Las Casas. They were making references in Hispaniola how the terrain and certain customs of the natives were reminding them of Spain. This would explain why the natives of Hispaniola were speaking Spanish so early. Remember, Diego, one of the first natives that Columbus took back to Europe, was already speaking Spanish, and this was never really explained in the history books. Also, statements and confessions by the natives, none of them were recorded in the native languages, and that should be an indication that somehow these natives were either speaking Spanish already or somehow picking up the language very easily. This would explain the surplus of cattle and horses on the island so early, only a few years after the conquistadors arrived. This would explain and make sense of those hung, killed, and enslaved by Columbus, including not only Indians but also Spaniards. Remember, those images that we see of those hung and being chopped up, arms and limbs being cut off, according to Columbus and Las Casas' own accounts, some of these very same folks were Spaniards. So it would make more sense that there were Spaniards already on the island rather than Columbus chopping off and hanging the same people he came with. This would also explain the island already divided into 7 provinces or cities, not 5 as widely believed. We showed images of those original 5 provinces, but there were actually 7, 2 hidden and tucked away on the north coast. This will also explain the naming of Hispaniola, since the island was mostly founded by Spanish settlers 700 years prior to Columbus arriving. This would explain how the Santiago Knights were able to settle 7 cities from Hispaniola, possibly before and during Columbus' arrival. The Santiago Knights arrived on the island, and how the island was really divided into 7 sections. And I want to leave it with this. This is the 7 cities of Hispaniola. We know of Marin, that's the northwest section of the island. That's where Columbus first arrived and found a cacique willing to help him in his conquest of the island. Then we have Manguana, that's right in the middle. That's where the Sabao Valley is. That's where most of the fertile land on the island is located. And then we have Jawagua, that's the lower end of on the island. That's where most of the caciques, particularly Anacaona, situated, and also the cacique Enrique, who participated in that 1533 treaty. That was the land that was allocated to him. And then we have Magua, that's right there on the north coast. And then we have Hagui, and that's all the way to the east. So as we can see on Magua, there's a section kind of split off, dividing 2 sections there, Sigayo and Macori. So this would make the 2 hidden cities on the north coast, making it a total of 7 provinces, 7 cities on the island of Hispaniola. Was this island the mythical Antilla of old times? Did Don Rodrigo and the 6 bishops arrive 700 years prior to Columbus onto this island? It would for sure explain a lot of things if that was true. This is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel, and we are continuing to dig deeper into the truth of the island.